When Bol Bol was drafted by the Miami Heat in 2019, we didn't really know a lot about him. But this Sudanese-American basketball player has defied the odds and has become a rather impressive power forward in the NBA. Today, we'll be talking about everything you need to know about Bol Bol, including some things that'll blow your mind. So, without any further ado, let's dive right in. His interesting background. One of the first things that probably comes to your mind when you think about Bol Bol is his interesting name. He has the same first name and last name. Well, that's because he gets his last name from his grandfather, and his first name also simply happens to be Bol. He's the son of a former NBA player named Manute Bol, but before he was born, his family moved back to Sudan to see their chances in their home country. By this point, his father had already spent most of his NBA money, and he didn't have much to support his family. The cost of living in Sudan was much lower than in the United States, so it was a pretty easy decision for him to make. His height. Bol Bol is from the Dinka tribe, known for being the tallest ethnicity in the world. On average, an adult Dinka male is probably closer to 7 feet than he is to 6 feet. Numerous NBA players in the past and present also have Dinka heritage, which isn't shocking considering the role height plays in the sport. At one point, his father, Manute Bol, was the tallest basketball player in the history of the NBA, standing at 7 feet and 10 inches. Shortly after Bol Bol moved to the US, he joined his school's basketball team in Othale, Kansas. As we've already mentioned, he comes from an ethnicity known for its people's height, and most of the time, that height comes at a really young age. Bol Bol was over 6 feet before he was even a teenager, and by the time he was in 7th grade, he was already 6'5". In fact, that even caught the attention of various national news outlets across the country, showing him towering over the rest of the students whenever he was practicing. He was already a star before he even made it a goal for himself to play in the NBA. Of course, when you even looked at him, you knew he would be perfect for the league. Why he left Sudan. We've already mentioned that Bol Bol was born in Sudan and later he moved to the US, but we never really mentioned why that happened. Well, his family didn't have a lot of money, but his parents had already lived in the United States in the past, so it was like a second home to them. But around the time Bol was born, Sudan was in the midst of a brutal civil war that killed as many as 2.5 million people. Because of his father's history of working in the US, which was opposed to the most dominant faction in the war, his family was accused of being American spies. Because of the threats against his life, Bol and his family were forced to flee their country and move to the US when he was just 2 years old. He probably doesn't remember most of this, but his family certainly remembers all the trauma they had to go through to bring him somewhere safe. Thankfully, Bol and his family received American citizenship when he was just a kid. He was a 5-star recruit. Because of the media attention surrounding him, specifically his height, Bol Bol quickly became one of the most notable high school basketball players in America. Not only was he tall, but he was also very skilled at being a power forward. He was receiving offers from high schools across the country to play for them. He was pretty much a star since he was a child. In all 3 years of his high school basketball career, he played for a different school. He started at the Bishop Meade High School in Kansas, where he was just a freshman, moved on to the Mater Dei High School in California as a sophomore, and he finally settled with Findlay Prep in Henderson, Nevada as a senior. By the time he was ready to graduate, he was rated as a 5-star recruit by ESPN, 247 Sports, and Rivals. He was the 4th highest ranked recruiting prospect in the world, and it was clear to everyone that he would be a very valuable college basketball player. His college career was a disaster. Because of his recruiting stats, Bol Bol was given offers by pretty much every major college in America, and he ended up picking Oregon to officially start his career. In his debut game, Bol Bol hit a double-double by getting 12 points and 12 rebounds against Portland State. That performance alone was enough to cement his position as one of the top prospects of whatever NBA draft he would enter. He played under head coach Dana Altman, who described him as one of the most exciting talents he had ever seen. Throughout his freshman year, Bol kept hitting milestone after milestone. Whether it was his debut double-double or his 32 points and 11 rebounds against Texas Southern, he was unstoppable. But unfortunately for him, before his college career could truly take off, Bol Bol was sidelined by an injury in his left foot. This wasn't the first time the rising star had been injured. He was also injured numerous times back when he was in high school, and it seems like the same injury was aggravated in his college career. It ended up being a disaster for him. Because of this, Bol decided to skip out on his last 2 years of college, and he registered himself for the 2019 NBA draft at the age of 18. The team that drafted him let go of him. Bol was still recovering from his injury back when he registered for the NBA draft. Despite that, Bol was picked up by Miami Heat in the second round of the 2019 draft. He was the 44th overall pick of the draft, which might not seem that bad considering he only played college as a freshman, but when you take into account that he was once a top 3 prospect, it's pretty bad. Ultimately, the Miami Heat decided to trade him to the Denver Nuggets before he could even play for his original team. He signed a 2-way deal with the Nuggets that would also allow him to play for the Windy City Bulls in the NBA G League. While Bol's performance in the G League was definitely great, he could have been better for the Nuggets. Young Thug designed his draft suit. While his placement in the draft may not have been that impressive, it was what he wore that caught everyone's attention. Bol Bol became friends with Young Thug through a mutual friend before he even played a single game in the NBA. The Atlanta rapper thought it would be a good idea if Bol Bol, who's by far the tallest player that year in the NBA draft, could represent his clothing brand called Spider. The suit he wore reportedly cost over $100,000, which is just insane, considering the average G League salary is just $35,000. He was wearing clothes worth more than most of his teammates were earning. While it might not have helped his chances in that year's NBA draft, it certainly made him one of the most talked about players at the event, and at the end of the day, Young Thug got the promo that he needed. He was so good, he had to be drug tested. While Bol Bol used to play in the NBA G League as part of the Windy City Bulls, he was generally considered one of the most dominant players on the team. A lot of fans were impressed how athletic he was despite his monstrous size. It was truly a treat to watch him play. But his abilities also made him a bit suspicious in the eyes of the NBA, who suspected he may be using PEDs. He was randomly told to get drug tested in 2020, and to everyone's surprise, Bol Bol wasn't on steroids, he was just a freak of nature. Being so good that people think you're on drugs is definitely a flex in our eyes. He found his place in the Orlando Magic. Bol Bol's time with the Denver Nuggets was cut short after a foot injury, causing the team to trade him with the Boston Celtics. From there, he was traded to Orlando Magic, making his journey one of the most confusing to track. However, his time with the Magic has been nothing short of magical. He was picked up as a backup, but quickly worked his way up to becoming a starter. His per-point game average is now 13 compared to just 2.4 last season. More importantly, it seems like the days of injuries are behind him now. Could the Orlando Magic be the team Bol Bol needed to shine in the NBA for the first time? We'll just have to wait and see. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Bol Bol could become a top player one day? Let us know in the comments down below.